Hey, how's it going? Keith Morgan here for TechTarot.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at part 3 of our custom set extension tutorial. This part will focus on texturing the windows. Part 4 will focus on texturing the rest of the walls and the concrete, etc. But the windows will pay a little extra attention to, as we need to create multiple texture maps for them. And we'll be creating a set that can not only be used for day, but as well as we can mix them for nighttime, so that we can actually have them light up and use those textures when they need to be used. So this one is a Photoshop tutorial technically, but we have to start out in Blender by rendering out our UV maps, so we know where to place our textures. So I'm just going to go ahead and tab into edit mode, and with our glass selected, you can see we have our layout here. We'll put the blend file on the site for you guys to follow along from this step, if you want to do that. So, if you didn't have any of this selected, you just make sure you go to your glass, make sure you're on your Windows UV map, otherwise you won't be getting the correct coordinates as we unwrapped before. And then we'll just hit select, and you should have all your glass panels as we had them. So what we need to do to use, or to get this into Photoshop, is we're going to go down here to UVs and export our UV layout. And we're just going to stick to a 1024 by 1024 map. So that's 1024 pixels by 1024 pixels for that square. We're going to turn the fill opacity to 0. And then we're just going to go ahead and navigate to our textures. And we're just going to call this window UV layout, and then we'll save that. So that's all we need to do for Blender for this this tutorial. So we'll just get rid of that, and I'll bring Photoshop over here, and I'll drag in our UV layout. Okay, so you can see here we have all our black lines from our from Blender, and I'm just going to go ahead and add a navigator over here just so I can work around a little bit faster. That's just one of the things I like to use, is the navigator. You can get a nice global view of where you are, and yeah, quite handy. So we're just going to go ahead and add another layer, and we're going to fill it with white. So with white, take your paint bucket, fill white, so just so you can make sure your opacity is at 100. Fill it with white, and that way you can see your actual layout. So you can see here we have 10 stacks of the main windows. So that'll be 10 different textures we make for those. We have the 2 doors at the entrance, and then the 2 sets of smaller windows up by the roof. So each of these will get a different texture. So we're going to start by putting what I suppose would be the diffuse map, or the color map for the windows. We'll also need to generate a bump map for any of the metal bars that cross the window, which we will cover. And we'll also create an emission map for the nighttime windows, and we may even make a separate set of color maps for those. And then we also have to make a glossy map also, because the texture we'll be putting down here on these doors will be a different glossy amount than what will actually be on the windows up above. So we'll just make a grayscale map for that to dictate where the highest level of gloss will be, and we'll use that to factor the glossy node back in Blender later when we actually do the texturing. So with that, let's move this over. Whoop. Put that at the top of our stack. So you can see here I've gone ahead and grabbed a few textures from cgtextures.com. So this is what we're going to be using to build our different window textures. So you'll notice, we have these long windows, so we'll mostly be utilizing these ones here, and we'll have to edit them accordingly to make them, day ready, as we see fit. And I also grabbed some standard blinds, some windows of sorts, some more blinds, and some broken glass. These will be for the doors, and you can see this is what I mean. Like this isn't a very shiny glass at all. So this will be where we need to have the different, or like the glossy map dictate that this is less glossy than the rest of the windows. So yeah, let's just go about making this. So I'll just take this texture, drag it over, plop it in, and I'll just resize it, hitting Control T to go into free transform. And then if you just hold Shift while you're dragging a corner, it'll scale it uniformly. And we'll just line it up. And I'm just going to go ahead to the crop tool. I'm going to hit delete crop pixels, and then I'll hit enter once, enter again, and then that'll just make the extra piece of that layer go away. Go back to our selection tool by either clicking it or hitting V. And then I can just go ahead, take our rectangular marquee tool, and we'll just take the small patch of window that we actually need, and we'll copy it, and we'll paste it. So we have that. I'll just hide this layer now, and we'll move that into place. There. So this is where it might get a little bit tedious. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to sample some windows from a few of these different ones, and we're just going to put them into place. So the reason we made these different piles is so that you can have different looking windows, so you don't want to put the same texture in each of these boxes, otherwise it defeats the purpose of separating them into so many different piles. You know, if you wanted to have more windows of the same texture, you could go back to Blender, move some of these over into the same pile, or just copy the texture over into those patches if you wanted more of the same texture. But otherwise, we will continue the way we are. So I'm just going to hide that stuff for now. We'll grab these dark blinds here, copy that, paste it, hide that, bring back our UV layout. And actually, this will be a good chance to name things. So this is our UV layout. So we'll move that over here. And it's alright if it extends a little bit. That'll just make sure that you don't get any white spaces along the edge. You'll want it to run over a little bit. And if you're having trouble seeing the textures on these dark areas, just go ahead to your UV layout, hit Control I, and that'll invert the colors and make it white as opposed to black, just so you can see what's what. And just put it back when you are done. So we have 2 there. And we'll just keep going. See if we can grab another texture from this one. Okay. So I think we've gotten as much out of this texture as we probably should, so we'll just delete that layer now. Grab the second texture. It's more of the same, but you can see there's a little bit different, different things we can sample. So we'll just grab this. Make sure you grab enough to actually fill the texture. And we'll move it into place. We'll scale it up, we'll cheat it a little bit. You should try to keep these all on the same scale, because otherwise they'll start to look out of place. But you know, just doing a little bit of tweaking here and there isn't gonna be the end of the world. You should also try and, if your window has these crossbars along them, you should try and line them up between your different windows, just so that you keep the you know, they're all in line going down the building. I think we've gotten all we need out of that one. So these blinds are pretty forgiving. You can probably put these on quite a few. I'm just going to go ahead and scale it down so that it's about the proper scale. Okay, so you can see this texture is a little too short. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna duplicate it. So we'll just take the layer, we'll drag it into the new layer icon, and we'll just move it over and take off a chunk to that line. Just hit delete, and we'll just move it into place, and then we'll just cut off the rest. Okay, so we can actually reuse this blind texture another way. You know, we could, we'll make another copy of the original layer. Oop. We'll move it over, maybe into the middle or something. And then we could go ahead and copy, what could we do? Take one of these and let's see. Yeah, this one. So we can just go ahead and sample one of these smaller areas that's kind of clear. So we'll take this room right here. Paste that, hide that layer. So we can just go about making a composite here, and let's put it behind the blinds, and you know, maybe we can move the blinds over just so they line up with the bar there, so it makes sense. So then we'll take that layer again, we'll duplicate it, hitting Control J if you want to duplicate it quick. We'll move it over as well, put the black bar there, and I'll just trim the blinds a little bit on this side, just so that lines up a bit better. And we'll move this layer over again. Okay, so we have that. That looks pretty decent. Yeah. What else do we got? We have these windows, and these are gonna go. You know, if you have some uniquer windows, if uniquer is a word, more unique, I suppose. Windows, you can go ahead and put those in there. So these short ones near the top of the building are, you know, they're not the standard sized story tall windows we have on the rest of the building. So these are going to get a little bit different window. This could be like maintenance areas. And you know, it's alright if you have to distort the texture to get it into place. Just do that. And we'll try and get this black border inside, just since looks a little bit neater with it. Okay, and for safe measure, I'm just going to go ahead and draw a little bit extra bleed around it, make a new layer underneath it. Yeah, and I'm just going to go ahead and fill it with black, and that'll just make sure that around the edge we don't get a white line where the UV map might be coming out of the texture. So we have that, and we can just pretty much copy that down here as well. So we'll take both layers, hit Control, actually we'll take this layer with the windows on it, and we'll hit Control E to flatten it down onto the black bleed we just made. And I'll hit Control J again to duplicate it, move it down into this window. This is where it's handy to invert your layout so you can actually see what's going on. So you just want to, you know, make it even. That looks about right. So we'll just uninvert that. just save. So it helps to put all this stuff into folders, especially if you're losing track of what you're doing. And also if your naming starts to get a little out of hand. So I'm just going to select this bottom window layer. I'm going to go up to the top one, hit shift while I click, and then I'll select all of these. And then I'll drag them into the new folder icon, and then I'll just put them in there. So we'll just call this color maps. Let's go back inside, and we'll just quickly fill these windows. We'll grab both of these, copy, go over here and paste them. So these are going to go in the door windows down here. So we're just going to split the texture along this natural line right here. And then, so we'll cut it, Control X, and then we'll paste it back. And we'll just rescale it, move it into place. And if you want to rescale, say you lined up that corner, and if you start rescaling it from the center, it'll screw that up. You just take this middle anchor point, and you move it to the corner there, and then it'll scale around that point. So you don't have to do so much intermediate work. And we have that. And I'll just do the same with this one. Move that into place. Take our anchor point, move it to the corner, rescale it down. And just like with these smaller windows, I'm going to go ahead and draw a box around these and fill it with black underneath on a new layer, just so we don't get any white pixels around the edges. And then I'm going to merge both of these down, so with the just so they have they're all one layer, and just doing that with Control E to flatten to merge down rather. And we'll save. And so we'll just finish these last windows quick. You can take as much time to do this. I'm just going to hurry for this last bit. So we'll take a big chunk of these, copy, paste it. Whoop. So we're just gonna copy them like this, just duplicating and moving. Whoop. And just a reminder to hit Control J when you're duplicating the layer. And this next one we'll do the same. We'll just merge all these curtains down, and we'll duplicate that layer, move it into place, scale it if you need to, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to hit Control U to bring up the HueSaturation panel, and we'll just change the color of it to something that doesn't really match it, or rather doesn't match the original, just so it looks a little more different. And you know, you can get away with doing this for a lot of other places as well. So we have that, and then we could probably do these blinds as well. Which one is that? Yeah, okay. Let's go grab another one. So we'll just grab this. And we'll copy, and we'll paste it. Okay, so we have that. And we'll just merge that into a single layer, and then like before, I'm just going to scale it up so I know it fills the UV map. Hit Control U to go to Hue Saturation. We'll boost the saturation a bit, and we'll make it, you know, oh, I don't know, maybe a dingy yellow of sorts, and maybe play with the lightness a smidge, something like that. Okay. And you know, you can take as much time blending these layers together. We're just gonna go a little bit quick so we can get through this, and not have to make you watch hours and hours of stuff. So those are our color maps, and we'll most likely be using the same ones from day to night. So we're just gonna go ahead and color correct this now, just so they're all approximately, you know, the same color. So we're just gonna start with these door layer here. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control M to bring up curves. And so we're going to balance just the glass like this to a warmish yellow. So I'm just going to go here and we're going to go to the blue channel, and we're going to pull some of the blue out. You can see that makes it a lot less, a little more warm, I suppose. And we're going to go to the red channel, boost the red a little bit, just a smidge. And we'll go to the green channel and boost the green. Now, additive color theory is at play here. So when you boost red and green at the same time, when you mix red and green light, you get yellow. So when we boost both of those, it gets more yellow. And when we take blue out, likewise, it's also making it more yellow. If you want it more orange, you just put a little more red in. And we'll also go to the RGB channel, and we'll just boost it a little bit just to make it a little bit brighter. So that's good. So I matched these to these, so I'm not going to worry about color correcting those. These fluorescent lamps, we could probably pull a little bit of green out. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take a curves adjustment layer just to make this go a little bit faster, not have to do it individually. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a box around all of these windows that we're going to put that have the fluorescent lights in them. And what's nice about adjustment layers is they have a quick mask built in. So just with the selected, we can go ahead and invert the selection with Control-Shift-I, and then we'll go ahead and fill that quick mask with black. So that way you can see here the icon changed so that there's a black border around the white square we selected. So that'll make the curves adjustment only affect where it's white on here. So we'll go ahead to the green channel, we'll drop the green a bit, just a bit. If you're getting an issue with the blind here, you can just go ahead and with your brush even, you could just make it something like that, paint it back out. You know, if you don't want so much of it coming out. Drop your opacity if you want a little bit to be there still. But yeah, so we'll just bring back some of the green, just a smidge. We'll go to the red channel, boost the red very slightly. Okay, that should be good. And I'm not going to worry about these too much. So we'll say that's fairly well color corrected. So we'll just save again. So we'll just collapse the color map here. So now what we have to do is we're going to generate a bump map. We have to create a emission map for the night windows. And we also have to get a glossy map for the different types of glass. So we'll do the glossy map first, just so it'll be easier. So we're going to go ahead and make a new layer just up here. Well, we'll just make it, we'll give it a new folder too, just to be consistent. We'll call this glossy map. And you know, if you make multiple glossy maps, you can just shove them all in there. We'll name the layer glossy map as well. So for this, we're just going to make everything white, which when we mix in the glossy shader later in Blender, it'll be 100% glossy. Like it'll mix in 100% glossy, and then we can just tone it down from there if we want. So this is just create the proportion, as it were. So we'll just hide that layer for now, and then we'll see which ones we want to make not as glossy. So these ones down here won't be as glossy. So we'll go ahead and we'll give it, you know, a 50% gray or so. And on this layer, we'll just fill that. So essentially, these windows down here are half as glossy as the ones up here. And you could also use this for the roughness control in the Glossy shader. For example, just invert this map so that the white becomes black, 0 roughness, as it were, so it's 100% glossy, or rather, so your reflections are 100% crisp. And then down here, it would be a 0.5 roughness, which would diffuse the reflections quite a bit. And you could just use a color ramp to remap those values if you wanted to adjust that as such. But we'll get into that later, perhaps. So we have our glossy map. We also have to painstakingly go about getting the metal out of here, like the metal bars that go across the windows. So we'll just go ahead quickly, very quickly, and we'll just mask those out. So I'll just time lapse this as well. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about changing the glossy map down here, just due to the fact that the windows and the metal are likely, because the glass is so rough, it'll probably be about the same glossy level as the metal itself. So I'm not going to worry about that too much down there. But over here, with all those selected here, I'm just going to create a new layer under our glossy map here. And this is just for us to use later as well. I'm just going to create a new layer, fill our selection with black. So this is what we have for our bars. And that'll just help us select that later, especially when we're generating the bump map for those bars. But anyways, with that selected as well, I'm just going to hide that and create a new layer for our glossy map. And we'll also just sample and fill that with 50% gray. And we can always adjust that back in Blender as needed with a converter node of sorts, if we wanted. So that should be our glossy map for all we need here. So we'll create another folder for our bump map. Okay. So for our bump map, we're going to go ahead and we're going to duplicate our color maps folder by dragging it into a new layer. And we're just going to go ahead and merge the group. And so we'll call this bump map. Okay. So we'll drag that into the bump map folder. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to filter, other, and then high pass. And if we put this really low, we can start to see the detail come out. So we're just going to put that to a level that we need, and that'll work for us. So that looks pretty good. Okay, and the only areas we really need the bump to show up is on the bars down here, which is working out very nicely, and the glass down here as well. So that's showing up quite well. Everything else, you know, you would expect it to have bump, but when it's behind glass, it's just a shiny sheet, right? So we don't have to worry about bump on that. So we have the texture details extracted there. So we'll hit OK. And then the way bump maps function is they work on a grayscale image. So 50% gray equals 0 change in height of the surface when it's interpreted. And white correlates to a surface that protrudes outwards, and then darker than 50% gray corresponds to where the surface bumps inward. So we're just going to go ahead and change some of these values just so that they correlate to that. So the metal bars are higher than the actual windows themselves. So for these here, I'm just going to go ahead and invert it by hitting Control-I. Now the 50% gray value doesn't change because it's 50%, but this actual frame itself that was dark is now light, which is what we need. The glass here is right. Sorry, the cracks in the glass are correct. It's just the bars. I'm just gonna invert the whole thing for now, and you know what? That's probably fine. It's such a minor detail, probably won't notice much. The important thing is that it is going to diffuse the light more where it is bumped. And then for the rest of this, we're just going to go ahead and invert all these just to make it easy on ourselves. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a new layer underneath it. We're going to go ahead and go to Edit, Fill, and we're going to put 50% gray, so you can see that's all hunky-dory. And we're just going to go ahead and erase the top bump map layer where we don't need bump. So these curtains here, we don't need it. Blinds, we don't need it. We need it here, just in the small part here in the middle. So or sorry, where the bars are rather. So we'll just get rid of that. This window doesn't really have any function for it. You know, you can take as much time as you want to get this looking really nice. I'm just gonna kind of rush through it. Like I said, it's a minor detail, but when you put the effort into it, it shows. So, you know, take the time if you want. But we'll get rid of this. And this is where the bars we drew actually can come in handy. If we go down to the glossy map where we had that original layer put, and we control click on the thumbnail for it, it'll select the areas for that. And then if we hit Control Shift I, it'll invert the selection, and then we can just paint not where the bars are, and hopefully that actually works out. Ish. We're gonna go ahead to the marquee tool. We're gonna refine the edge. So we're gonna refine the edge. We'll just change the view to black on white. On white, sure. And we're just gonna shift the edge to grow the selection just a bit. And then we'll hit Control Shift I to invert. Rather, it was already good. And we'll just paint all those areas that the bars don't need to be. Okay, that should have worked out. Yeah, that'll be enough. Put save. And so that is our bump map. Good. So then the last map we have to make is our emission map. So we'll turn back on our, or rather we'll hide our bump map, make a new folder, we'll call this emission map. So what the emission map will let us do is choose a factor for what part of the color map is actually emissive or emits light on our material later. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and grab another copy of our color map, and we can just duplicate the color map layer, right click on it, merge the group. So now we have our color map here. We'll drop that under the emission map folder, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add another layer below it, and we're going to fill it with black. So over here, we'll just fill it with black. And so where it's black, it won't emit, and where it's white, it will emit fully. Or depending if we convert it, it'll rescale those values. So you won't want it to emit the pattern that we see here. So what we'll do is we'll control click on our color map, and we'll get all this data. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fill it with white. So we'll just do that on a new layer. We'll hide our UV layout for a minute. So you can see we have that, but you're going to get these hard edges, which we don't really want. So I'm just going to undo that, back to before we have the fill. And I'm going to go to a selection tool. It doesn't really matter, just so long as we get this refine edge selection up here. So we'll click on that. And if we change the view mode to black on white, we can see what we're working with. And we're going to go ahead and feather it out and shift the edge. And we're just going to play with these settings so we get a nice diffusion. And okay, so we have that. So then we'll fill this with white as opposed to what we had before. So we have that. And if we just turn off our color map, we can see that this will be what gets emitted. You can see that some of these areas are kind of lacking. So if you want to go back over those, you can just draw another box around these areas. And we'll put another one around this, and another one around this, and these ones as well. Okay, we'll go back to refine edge, and we'll just feather this out. We'll just feather it out as is. Something soft like that. And just on a new layer, we'll fill that with white, just so we don't affect what we already have. And then we'll merge these layers by selecting both and going Control E. And then just to get rid of some of this heavy, or like this thick banding here, we'll just go ahead, blur it, Gaussian blur. And if we bring our panel over here, we'll just blur it by enough pixels to get rid of most of that stepping. And so that'll be, that's the base of our emission map. Now if we go back to our color map, you'll see we have these bars that we don't want to be emitting anything, just for safe measure. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back down to our glossy map here, and where we had the bar already selected, we're just going to take that, make a new layer. We'll bring back the glow, we'll take off the color map, and we're just going to fill this with black. So that'll make it so that the bars don't emit. And then likewise, we'll just turn on the color map again, and we'll just quickly draw the main one here. And we'll feather that out very slightly. And then we'll fill that with black as well. So you can see we have something like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and blur this entire layer with the black bars, just so it gets a little more, oh, too much. So it looks like there's some bloom going over the windows, like the light is being blown out. So we'll just go back into the Gaussian blur filter, and we'll just tweak it ever so slightly. You won't really notice it, but it'll be a little more, it'll blend a little bit better than if they were perfectly straight. So we have that now. So that is going to be our emission map. If you wanted to, you could go back and block in as many of these as you want. We're going to leave that for now. That looks pretty good. Yeah. But if you don't want all your windows to be the same brightness, say for example these curtains up here, you wouldn't expect them to be that bright, you can always go ahead and add another layer, and we'll just go ahead and draw areas where we wouldn't expect it to be as bright. We'll fill it with black, and then we'll just drop the layer opacity, so those won't emit as brightly. And especially for these smaller windows down here, we can do the same, just so that they're not exactly the same looking. And you can fine-tune it as much as you want. It'll just give you a bit of a less uniform look, which is always good when we're going for a more random look. And for that dark room, it also probably helps to turn the emission down, just so it'll probably cut down on the noise in the render as well. So we have that. So those are all our maps now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to save these out. So I'm going to go down to the color map, and with that, we're just going to go File, Save As, and we're going to save JPEGs, and we're going to call this Window Diffuse, as that'll be the base color. Hit OK, then we'll do the Glossy map, File, Save As, JPEG, Window Glossy, hit OK, turn on the bump map, File, Save As, JPEG, Window Bump, hit OK, and then finally File, Save As, JPEG, Window Emit, save. And it's important to remember that when you are saving out your different color maps that you leave the UV layout off, otherwise it'll be a part of those textures and it'll just ruin it. So that is how we make the different maps for the windows. So we look forward to seeing you in part 4, where we'll be texturing the rest of the building and setting up all the nodes for the different materials for the windows, the walls, the concrete, all that other stuff. So that's that, and for Tech Tyro, this is Keith Morgan, signing off.